Desperate single mom collapses. At gate Awakens in Billionaire'S arms on private jet. Have you ever been so desperate to save someone you love that you forgot to save yourself? Harper Wilson's hands trembled as she stared at the text message that would change everything. Surgery scheduled for next Friday. Insurance approved $40,000, remaining $35,000 due before procedure. The words blurred together as fluorescent airport lights seemed to pulse with each beat of her racing heart. 26 hours. That's how long she'd been awake, working back-to-back shifts at the medical clinic, then cleaning offices until midnight, followed by her early morning diner shift. All for Sophia. All for the 8-year-old daughter whose rare heart condition required surgery they could only half afford, even with insurance. The remaining $35,000 might as well have been $35 million. The phone slipped from her exhausted fingers as the world tilted sideways. Her last conscious thought was Sophia's sweet voice from that morning, asking, "Mommy, are you okay? You look really tired." Then darkness claimed her at gate 47, her body finally surrendering to months of impossible schedules and overwhelming fear. But Harper didn't hit the cold airport floor. Instead, she awakened to the softest leather she'd ever felt, surrounded by mahogany wood and crystal that caught the light like captured stars. The scent of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine filled her senses as concerned gray eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Easy," a deep voice murmured, rich and warm like aged whiskey. "You're safe." Elijah Brooks had been returning from another soulless business meeting when he saw her collapse. Something about the woman in the faded Walmart uniform had called to him, her natural grace evident even in exhaustion. Without thinking, he'd scooped her up, ignoring the curious stares of other passengers, and carried her onto his private jet. Now, watching her chocolate brown eyes flutter open, he felt something shift inside his chest, something he hadn't experienced in the 5 years since tragedy had taught him that love was a luxury he couldn't afford. Harper bolted upright, immediately regretting the sudden movement as her head spun. "Where am I? I need to get to Denver. My daughter, she needs me. I can't." "Breathe," Elijah said softly, his hand hovering near her shoulder, wanting to comfort but not wanting to overstep. "You're on my plane. We're heading to Denver. You fainted at the gate." The mortification hit her like a physical blow. This man, whoever he was, had seen her at her absolute lowest. His suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months, and here she was, wearing her work uniform that smelled faintly of disinfectant and desperation. She noticed he'd removed her worn sneakers and covered her with what looked like a cashmere jacket. The small kindnesses somehow made her humiliation worse. "I'm sorry," she whispered, struggling to sit up properly. "I'll pay you back for whatever this costs. I don't take charity." Elijah's heart clenched at the pride in her voice, the way her chin lifted despite her obvious embarrassment. He'd grown up surrounded by people who wanted his money, yet here was a woman who seemed to want anything but his help. "It's not charity. I was heading to Denver anyway." "Right," Harper said, not believing him for a second. She'd heard that tone before, the careful politeness wealthy people used when they were doing their good deed for the day. "Well, thank you for not letting me make a scene on the airport floor." As Harper moved to stand, their hands accidentally brushed when he reached to steady her. The electric shock that shot through both of them was undeniable, a current of attraction that neither had expected. Harper jerked her hand away as if burned, while Elijah found himself wanting to chase that connection, to understand why this stranger's touch affected him more than years of calculated business handshakes. "Your daughter," he said, desperate to keep her talking, to understand what had driven her to such exhaustion. "Is she all right?" Harper's entire demeanor changed, love and fear warring in her expression. "She has a congenital heart defect. She needs surgery, but—" She trailed off, unwilling to burden the stranger with their financial catastrophe. Elijah had built his fortune on reading people, understanding what they needed before they asked. But Harper Wilson was different. Beneath her exhaustion, he saw fierce intelligence, a strength that had been tested beyond measure but hadn't broken. Her love for her daughter radiated from every gesture, every protective instinct. When she smiled, thinking of Sophia, her entire face transformed, revealing a beauty that had nothing to do with perfect features and everything to do with a soul that loved without reservation. "How old is she?" he asked, genuinely curious about this child who inspired such devotion. 8, Harper said, her voice softening. "She's the smartest, funniest, bravest little girl you'd ever meet. She tells me not to worry about her. Can you believe that? An 8-year-old trying to comfort her mother?" Elijah found himself smiling at the pride in her voice. He'd never experienced that kind of unconditional love, the fierce protectiveness of a parent. His own childhood had been filled with boarding schools and nannies while his parents built their empire. "She sounds incredible." "She is," Harper agreed, then caught herself opening up to this stranger. She needed to maintain distance, to remember that wealthy men didn't rescue exhausted single mothers without expecting something in return. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Brooks, Elijah Brooks." He watched her face carefully, but she showed no recognition of his name or the business empire it represented. The novelty of that anonymity was intoxicating. "And you are? Harper Wilson?" She studied his aristocratic features, the way he moved with quiet confidence, the expensive watch that probably cost more than her car. Everything about him screamed old money and privilege, yet his eyes held a loneliness that seemed to echo her own. "I don't understand why you helped me." The honest question caught Elijah off guard. In his world, people rarely questioned motives so directly. "Maybe I needed to help as much as you needed help." Before Harper could process that cryptic response, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Mr. Brooks, we're encountering some severe weather ahead. I recommend we land in Colorado Springs and wait it out." Harper's heart sank. Every delay meant more time away from Sophia, more time for something to go wrong. "How long?" "Hard to say," the pilot replied. "Could be a few hours, could be overnight. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Your special place in this community of heartfelt stories is waiting for you." These passionate journeys of souls connecting against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful hearts just like yours. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story unfolds in our diary of love. The small Colorado town felt like something from a movie as they made their way through streets lined with quaint shops and cafes, all battened down against the approaching storm. The only hotel had exactly one room available, a fact that made Harper's cheeks burn with embarrassment and something else she didn't want to name. "I'll take the couch," Elijah said immediately, as if reading her thoughts. "Or I can get a different hotel." "In this weather? Don't be ridiculous," Harper replied, then immediately regretted her tone. This man had already done more for her than anyone had in years. "I mean, thank you. The couch is fine. For me, I'll take the couch." "Absolutely not." The firmness in his voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. Harper Wilson was used to fighting her battles alone, making her own decisions, surviving on her own terms. But something about Elijah's protective instincts, the way he seemed genuinely concerned for her comfort, made her feel cared for in a way she'd almost forgotten was possible. The hotel room was small but clean, with a king-sized bed that seemed to dominate the space and a love seat that would be torture for Elijah's tall frame. Harper tried not to notice how his presence filled the room, how his cologne lingered in the air between them, how her body seemed hyper-aware of his every movement. "I need to call Sophia," she said, grateful for the distraction. She stepped onto the small balcony, not wanting him to overhear what was sure to be a difficult conversation. "Mommy?" Sophia's voice was bright, despite the worry Harper could hear underneath. "Are you in Denver? Did you find Aunt Lisa?" "Not yet, baby," Harper said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "There's a storm, so I'm stopped in Colorado for the night. How are you feeling? Did you take your medicine?" "I'm okay, Mommy. Mrs. Rodriguez made me soup, and I did my homework. When will you be back?" The simple question nearly broke Harper's heart. "Soon, sweetheart. I promise. Just a few more days, and then we'll figure everything out." "Mommy?" Sophia's voice grew smaller. "Are you scared?" Harper closed her eyes, rain beginning to patter against the balcony railing. "A little," she admitted, because Sophia could always tell when she was lying. But you know what? Brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Brave means you keep going even when you are scared. Like you do. Like we both do. When Harper came back inside, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Elijah pretended he hadn't heard every word, hadn't felt his chest tighten at the conversation between mother and daughter. But he had heard, and something about Harper's gentle strength, her honesty with her child, made him want to fix everything for them. "She sounds wonderful," he said quietly. Harper nodded, not trusting her voice. She moved to close the curtains as the first real raindrops began hitting the windows. "Harper," Elijah said carefully, "about the surgery costs." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "I appreciate everything you've done, really, but I don't need rescuing. Sophia and I will figure it out. We always do." "But if there was a way—" "There isn't." Harper turned to face him, her brown eyes flashing with fierce independence. "I won't be anyone's charity case, and I won't owe anyone anything I can't pay back. That's not the example I want to set for my daughter." Elijah found himself both frustrated and amazed by her pride. Every woman he'd known had wanted something from him, some piece of his wealth or status. Harper Wilson wanted nothing from him, and somehow that made him want to give her everything. I can already feel the chemistry building between these two souls. Drop a heart emoji if you're feeling that magnetic pull too, and tell me in the comments about a time when a stranger's kindness changed everything for you. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely as the storm hit in earnest. In the sudden darkness, Harper's sharp intake of breath revealed more than she'd intended. "It's okay." Elijah's voice came from much closer than she'd expected. "Just the storm." But it wasn't okay. Harper had been afraid of storms since childhood, a fear that had only grown worse since Sophia's diagnosis. Every crash of thunder reminded her of how quickly life could change, how powerless she was against forces beyond her control. Lightning illuminated the room in stark flashes, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the building. Harper wrapped her arms around herself, trying to appear calm, but when the next thunderclap came, she couldn't suppress a small cry. "Hey!" Elijah's voice was gentle as he moved closer in the darkness. "It's all right. You're safe." "I know," Harper whispered, but her voice shook. Storms make me think about how everything can change so fast. One day, Sophia was a healthy baby, and then—" She couldn't finish the thought. Without thinking, Elijah reached for her, his hands finding her shoulders in the darkness. The moment he touched her, both of them felt that electric current again, stronger this time, impossible to ignore. Harper should have pulled away, should have maintained the distance she'd worked so hard to establish. Instead, she found herself stepping closer, drawn to his warmth and strength. "Come here," Elijah murmured, and somehow it didn't sound like a request, but like the most natural thing in the world. His arms came around her, and for the first time in months, Harper felt truly safe. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, her hands fisted in his shirt. "I can't remember the last time someone held me," she whispered against his chest, the confession escaping before she could stop it. Elijah's arms tightened around her. When was the last time he'd held someone without calculation, without agenda? When had he last felt this overwhelming need to protect, to cherish? "I can't remember the last time I wanted to hold someone." The honesty in his voice made Harper look up, and even in the darkness, she could feel his gaze on her face. They were so close, she could feel his breath on her lips, could sense the tension coiling between them like a living thing. "Harper," he breathed, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. She knew she should step away, should remember all the reasons this was impossible. But thunder crashed overhead, and instead of pulling back, she found herself rising on her toes, drawn to him like a magnet to steel. The almost kiss hung between them, electric and inevitable, until lightning flashed again and reality crashed back. Harper jerked away, her hand flying to her lips as if she could still feel the ghost of his touch. "I'm sorry," she gasped. We can't." "Why?" The question was quiet, but she could hear the intensity underneath. "Because," Harper said, wrapping her arms around herself again. People like you don't really want people like me, and I can't afford to forget that. Elijah wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that she was wrong, that he'd never wanted anyone the way he wanted her. But the words stuck in his throat, trapped by years of learning that his wealth complicated every relationship, every genuine emotion. They spent the rest of the night on opposite sides of the room, but the awareness between them never faded. Every rustle of movement, every sigh, every breath seemed magnified in the darkness. By morning, both were exhausted for entirely different reasons than the day before. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and clean, but the tension between them had only intensified. As they prepared to continue their journey to Denver, neither spoke of what had almost happened, but both carried the memory like a secret flame. "Ready?" Elijah asked as they prepared to board his jet again. Harper nodded, not trusting her voice. She was ready to get to Denver, ready to focus on Sophia, ready to put distance between herself and feelings she couldn't afford to have. But as the jet lifted off into the clear morning sky, Harper couldn't stop herself from stealing glances at Elijah Brooks, the mysterious billionaire who had rescued her, and somehow, in the space of one storm-filled night, had begun to rescue her heart as well. What she didn't know was that Elijah was doing the same thing, watching her profile as she gazed out the window, wondering how one collapsed woman at an airport gate had managed to collapse every wall he'd spent years building around his heart. Chapter 2. Denver's skyline stretched before them as the jet descended, but Harper's attention was focused entirely on her phone and the increasingly frantic text messages from her sister Lisa. "Sophia asking for you constantly. Had episode last night but stable now. I'm so sorry about the money, Harper. I feel terrible." Another message. "Children's Hospital here says they can do the surgery too. Might be worth getting second opinion. Hurry." Elijah noticed the way her knuckles whitened as she gripped the phone, the way her breathing became shallow and quick. Without a word, he reached over and covered her hand with his, the simple gesture somehow steadying them both. "We'll get you to her," he said quietly. "I promise." Harper wanted to pull away from his touch, wanted to maintain the barriers she'd tried so desperately to rebuild during the flight, but something about Elijah Brooks had gotten under her skin, past all her defenses, and she found herself holding on to his strength like a lifeline. The drive to Children's Hospital of Denver should have taken 30 minutes. Elijah made it in 15, his expensive car weaving through traffic with the skill of someone who understood that time was everything. Harper didn't even think to be nervous about his driving. Her entire world had narrowed to getting to Sophia. They found her in the pediatric ward, looking impossibly small in the hospital bed, her dark curls spread across the pillow. Lisa sat beside her looking exhausted and guilty, her red-rimmed eyes showing she'd been crying. But Sophia's eyes were bright and alert, and when she saw Harper, her face lit up with a smile that could power the entire city. "Mommy?" Sophia's voice was stronger than Harper had dared hope. "You came so fast." Harper rushed to the bedside, gathering her daughter into her arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Of course I came fast, baby girl. How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here," Sophia said, then her curious gaze moved to Elijah, who had hung back near the doorway. "Who's that nice man?" "He looks really tall." Lisa stood up, extending her hand to Elijah. "I'm Lisa, Harper's sister. Thank you for bringing her here so quickly." Harper followed her daughter's gaze, suddenly realizing she'd never properly introduced them. "Sophia, Lisa, this is Mr. Brooks. He helped me get here." Elijah stepped forward, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. "Hello, Sophia. Your mom told me you're pretty incredible." Sophia studied him with the frank assessment that only children could manage. "Are you really tall? Or does it just look that way because I'm in bed?" Elijah's laugh was genuine and warm. "I'm really tall. Sometimes I have to duck through doorways." "That must be hard," Sophia said seriously. "But I bet you can reach really high things. Mommy always needs help with tall shelves." "Sophia," Harper said, but she was smiling. Her daughter had always been precocious, able to charm everyone she met. Watching Elijah's face soften as he interacted with Sophia did something dangerous to Harper's heart. "Can I tell you a secret?" Sophia whispered conspiratorially to Elijah. He leaned down, playing along. "I'm very good at keeping secrets. My mommy works really, really hard, but sometimes I hear her talking on the phone about money," Sophia said, her voice dropping even lower. "I think she worries too much. She needs someone to help her not worry." Harper's breath caught, embarrassment and love for her perceptive daughter warring in her chest. "Sophia—" "It's okay, Mommy," Sophia said, reaching for Harper's hand. "Mr. Brooks has kind eyes. I can tell." Dr. Henry Williams chose that moment to enter, his expression cautiously optimistic as he reviewed Sophia's chart. Harper immediately stood, her body language shifting into protective mode. "How is she, Doctor?" Dr. Williams glanced at Elijah and Lisa, clearly wondering who they were, but Harper's slight nod seemed to indicate he could speak freely. "The good news is that we've consulted with our surgical team here, and we believe we can perform the procedure with the same success rate as the original hospital. Her numbers are stable for now, but we do need to move forward within the next 7 to 10 days for optimal results." 7 to 10 days, Harper repeated, relief and panic warring in her voice. "And the cost would be the same?" "Actually, slightly less. We're looking at approximately $68,000 total. I understand insurance has approved $40,000, leaving a balance of $28,000. The number was still impossibly large, but it was better than the original quote. Harper felt a tiny spark of hope ignite in her chest. Lisa spoke up from beside the bed. "Harper, I'm so sorry about the loan falling through." "If there was any way, it's not your fault," Harper said quickly, squeezing her sister's hand. "You've already done so much letting us stay here, helping with Sophia." Elijah watched Harper's face, saw the exact moment when the weight of the financial burden hit her. Despite the reduced cost, her composure cracked just for a second, revealing the terrified mother underneath the strong facade. Without thinking, he spoke up. "What would it cost? The surgery, I mean, total." "Elijah, no," Harper said immediately, but he held up a hand. "I'm just asking for information." Dr. Williams looked uncomfortable. "As I mentioned, $68,000 total with $28,000 remaining after insurance." The number still felt crushing, but it was more manageable than before. Harper felt her world steady slightly, though $28,000 remained an insurmountable mountain. "Mommy," Sophia's small voice broke through her panic. "Are you okay?" Harper forced a smile, leaning down to kiss her daughter's forehead. "I'm fine, baby. The doctors are going to take really good care of you." "Can I talk to you?" Elijah asked quietly, gesturing toward the hallway. Harper followed him out, her legs feeling unsteady. The moment they were alone, the words burst out of her. "Don't. Whatever you're thinking, don't. I can't accept that kind of money from you. I won't." "Why?" Elijah asked, his voice gentle but persistent. "Why is your pride worth more than your daughter's life?" The question hit like a physical blow. "It's not about pride," Harper said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about what kind of person I am, what kind of mother I am. I don't take handouts." "It wouldn't be a handout." "Then what would it be?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the Denver skyline. How could he explain that in less than 24 hours, she had become important to him in ways he didn't understand? How could he tell her that helping Sophia felt as necessary as breathing? "It would be one person caring about another person," he said finally. "No strings, no expectations, just caring." Harper studied his face, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda, but all she saw was sincerity and something else, something that looked like the same longing she felt when she looked at him. "I can't," she whispered. "Don't you understand? If I take your money, what does that make me? What does that make this?" She gestured between them, acknowledging for the first time that there was a "this" to discuss. "It makes you a mother who loves her daughter," Elijah said simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." Before Harper could respond, a commotion from Sophia's room sent them both running back inside. Sophia was sitting up in bed, her face flushed with excitement. "Mommy, look!" She held up a hand-drawn picture that she'd apparently been working on while they talked. "I drew our family." Harper's heart clenched as she looked at the drawing. There was Sophia in the middle, with her characteristic curly hair and bright smile. Next to her was a figure that was clearly Harper, with brown skin and a blue uniform. And on the other side was a tall figure with light skin and what looked suspiciously like a business suit. "Who's this?" Harper asked, pointing to the tall figure. "That's Mr. Brooks," Sophia said proudly. "He helped you get to me, so that makes him family, right?" Elijah felt something shift in his chest, something profound and irreversible. This child, this precious little girl who faced her illness with such courage, had included him in her family portrait after knowing him for less than an hour. When was the last time anyone had wanted him to be part of their family? When had anyone seen him as more than a bank account with legs? "Sophia," Harper said gently, "Mr. Brooks has his own family." "Actually," Elijah interrupted, his voice rough with emotion, "I don't. Not really." He looked at Sophia's drawing again, at the way she'd drawn them all holding hands. "This might be the most beautiful family portrait I've ever seen," Sophia beamed. "You can keep it if you want." "I would be honored," Elijah said, and meant it. Dr. Williams returned with more test results, his expression troubled. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to speak with you privately." Harper's blood turned to ice. "Is she getting worse?" "Her levels have shifted since this morning. We may need to move even faster than I thought." The words hit Harper like a physical blow. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself, the room spinning around her. Faster meant sooner. Sooner meant she had even less time to figure out how to pay for a surgery she couldn't afford. "How much faster?" she managed to ask. "Days, not weeks?" Harper's composure finally shattered. The sob that escaped her was raw and broken, filled with months of held-back fear and exhaustion. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as the weight of her impossible situation crushed down on her. Elijah didn't think. He simply moved, wrapping his arms around her as she fell apart in the hospital corridor. She should have pulled away, should have maintained her dignity, but she was too tired, too scared, too desperate to do anything but collapse into his strength. "I can't lose her," she sobbed against his chest. "She's everything. She's my whole world. I don't know how to—" "You won't lose her," Elijah said fiercely, his arms tightening around her. "I promise you, Harper Wilson, you will not lose her." "But the money?" "Forget the money," he said, pulling back to look at her tear-stained face. "Money is just numbers. Sophia is real. You are real. This ... He gestured between them, his hand cupping her cheek. "This is real. Let me help. Please." Harper looked up into his gray eyes, saw the sincerity there, the genuine care that had nothing to do with obligation or pity. In that moment, standing in a hospital corridor with her world falling apart, she realized that Elijah Brooks wasn't trying to rescue her out of some misguided sense of charity. He was trying to rescue her because somehow, impossibly, he had come to care about them both. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "Why? Would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Elijah's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek, the gentle touch sending warmth through her entire body. "I don't understand it either," he admitted. "But when I saw you collapse at that gate, something inside me shifted. And meeting Sophia, seeing how brave you both are, how much you love each other. Harper, I haven't felt anything real in 5 years. You and Sophia, you make me feel real again." The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability he was showing her, broke down the last of Harper's defenses. This wasn't about charity or pity. This was about connection, about two broken people finding something whole in each other. "The surgery," she began. "Will be taken care of," Elijah said firmly. "Tonight, I'll call Dr. Williams and arrange everything." "Elijah, no conditions," he said, reading her thoughts. "No strings attached, no expectations, just one person helping another because it's the right thing to do." Harper stared at him for a long moment, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she'd been afraid to pray. Finally she nodded, the simple gesture feeling like the most difficult and most important decision she'd ever made. "Okay," she whispered. Okay. The relief on Elijah's face was so profound, it took her breath away. He pulled her close again, and this time, Harper didn't fight it. She let herself be held, let herself accept comfort and strength from someone who was offering it freely. "Thank you," she breathed against his chest. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Elijah said, his lips brushing the top of her head. "You've already given me more than you know." "What have I given you?" "A reason to care again," he said simply. "A reason to believe that good things still exist in the world." As they stood there in the hospital corridor, holding each other while Harper's tears of fear slowly transformed into tears of relief, neither of them noticed the small face watching them through the crack in the door. Sophia smiled to herself, satisfied that her family portrait had been prophetic after all, but their moment of peace was short-lived. A sharp, angry voice cut through the air like a blade. "Elijah, what in God's name is going on here?" They broke apart to see an elegantly dressed older woman striding down the corridor, her disapproving gaze taking in Harper's tear-stained face and Elijah's protective stance. Isabel Brooks had arrived, and she looked like she was ready for war. Chapter 3. Isabel Brooks moved through the hospital corridor like a force of nature, her designer heels clicking against the linoleum with military precision. At 62, she was still a formidable woman, with silver hair perfectly coiffed and eyes the same gray as her son's, but colder, calculating. Her gaze swept over Harper with the kind of dismissive assessment that could make strong men crumble. "Mother," Elijah said, stepping slightly in front of Harper, "what are you doing here?" "Victor told me you disappeared with some woman," Isabel said, her voice dripping with disapproval. "I didn't believe him until I had your pilot tracked. Imagine my surprise to discover my son playing Good Samaritan in a pediatric ward." Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks, the shame of being discussed like an object burning through her chest. "Mrs. Brooks," she said, extending her hand, "I'm Harper Wilson. Thank you for raising such a kind son." Isabel looked at Harper's offered hand as if it might contaminate her, making no move to shake it. "How convenient for you, meeting my son when you're in such dire need of financial assistance." The insinuation hit Harper like a slap. "I didn't know who he was when I fainted." "Of course you didn't," Isabel said with a smile that held no warmth. "Tell me, Miss Wilson, what exactly do you do for a living?" "I work 3 jobs," Harper replied, lifting her chin. "Medical clinic, office cleaning, and waiting tables." "How ambitious of you," Isabel said, the word ambitious sounding like an insult. "And the father of your child? Where is he in all this?" "Mother, enough," Elijah said, his voice carrying a warning. But Harper straightened her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. "He left when Sophia was diagnosed. Some people run from difficulty, Mrs. Brooks. Others face it head-on." "Indeed," Isabel said, her cold gaze moving between Harper and Elijah. "And some people have a talent for finding wealthy men to solve their problems." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Harper felt the blood drain from her face, the implication clear and devastating. In Isabel's world, women like Harper were predators, gold diggers who used their children's illnesses to manipulate generous men. "That's not what this is," Harper said quietly, but she could hear how weak it sounded. "Isn't it?" Isabel turned to her son. "Elijah, surely you can see what's happening here. This woman has played on your sympathies, used her sick child to manipulate your emotions. It's textbook." "You don't know what you're talking about," Elijah said, but Harper caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, the momentary doubt that Isabel's words had planted. "Don't I?" Isabel reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet, swiping to what looked like a news article. "This isn't the first time you've gotten emotionally involved with a woman in crisis, darling. Remember Sarah, the artist whose gallery was failing? Or Maria, the single mother who needed help with her mortgage? You have a pattern, Elijah, and people have noticed." Harper stared at the tablet, seeing headlines about Elijah's previous relationships, photos of him with beautiful women who all seemed to have one thing in common. They'd needed his help. The words blurred together, but the implication was clear. Elijah Brooks had a history of rescuing women, and those relationships never lasted. "That's different," Elijah said, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is different." Is it? Isabel's voice was almost gentle now, the way a doctor might deliver a terminal diagnosis. Or is this just another lost soul you've decided to save? Another charity case that makes you feel useful? Harper felt something inside her break, something fragile and hopeful that had been growing since the moment she'd awakened on Elijah's plane. She'd been naive, foolishly romantic, thinking that a man like him could genuinely care about someone like her. But Isabel was right. Wealthy men didn't fall for exhausted single mothers from the wrong side of town. They rescued them, felt good about themselves for a while, then moved on to the next worthy cause. "I need to go," Harper said quietly, not trusting her voice to remain steady. "Harper, wait." Elijah reached for her, but she stepped back. "No, your mother's right," Harper said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I let myself believe something that was never real. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Brooks, but Sophia and I will find another way." "There is no other way," Elijah said desperately. "Harper, don't let her poison this. What we have is real." "What we have," Harper said, her voice growing stronger, "is a wealthy man feeling sorry for a poor woman and her sick child. That's not love, Elijah. That's pity." "You don't believe that," Elijah said, moving closer, but Harper held up a hand to stop him. "I have to believe it," she whispered, "because the alternative is admitting that I fell for someone who could never really see me as an equal." Isabel watched the exchange with satisfaction, her mission accomplished. "Elijah, darling, perhaps we should discuss the family business matters that brought me here. I'm sure Miss Wilson needs to get back to her daughter." Harper nodded stiffly, turning toward Sophia's room. "Goodbye, Mrs. Brooks." "Elijah." But as Harper reached for the door handle, Dr. Williams appeared, his expression grave. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to speak with you immediately. We've had some developments." Harper's heart stopped. "What kind of developments?" "Sophia's condition has deteriorated significantly in the last hour. We need to perform the surgery within the next 48 hours, or—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. The world tilted around Harper. 48 hours. She had 48 hours to find $75,000 or watch her daughter die. The impossibility of it crashed over her like a wave, drowning her in despair. "Mrs. Wilson," Dr. Williams said gently, "the surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, pending insurance approval and payment arrangements." "There won't be insurance approval," Harper said numbly, "and I don't have the money." "Actually," Elijah said, stepping forward, "the surgery has been approved and the remaining balance has been covered. I spoke with the billing department an hour ago." Harper spun around, fury and gratitude warring in her expression. "I told you I couldn't accept that. $28,000, Elijah." "And I told you that your daughter's life is more important than your pride," Elijah shot back. "The balance is covered, Harper." "It's done." "How dare you," Harper breathed. "How dare you make that decision without my consent? How dare I save your daughter's life?" Elijah's own temper was rising now. "How dare I care about both of you enough to do what needs to be done?" "You don't understand," Harper said, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you see what this does to me, what this makes me?" "It makes you a mother whose child will live," Elijah said fiercely. "That's all it makes you." Isabel watched the confrontation with growing alarm. This wasn't going according to plan. Instead of driving Harper away, the crisis seemed to be binding her son to this woman even more tightly. "Elijah," she said sharply, "surely you can see that Miss Wilson is too proud to accept help gracefully. Perhaps it would be better for everyone if—" "Mother, stop!" Elijah's voice was quiet but deadly. "Just stop." He turned back to Harper, his gray eyes intense with emotion. "I know you're scared. I know this challenges everything you believe about independence and self-reliance. But Harper, sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do." Harper stared at him. This man who had turned her world upside down in less than 2 days. Part of her wanted to keep fighting, to maintain the walls that had protected her for so long, but another part, the part that was tired of carrying everything alone, wanted desperately to believe him. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to let someone help me." "You don't have to know how," Elijah said softly. "You just have to let it happen." Dr. Williams cleared his throat diplomatically. "Mrs. Wilson, I need your signature on the surgical consent forms. We're looking at scheduling the procedure for early next week, pending final pre-surgical tests." Harper nodded, her mind spinning. As she followed Dr. Williams down the hall, she could hear Isabel's sharp voice behind her. "This is madness, Elijah. You barely know this woman." "I know enough," Elijah replied. "I know she's brave and strong and loves her daughter more than life itself. I know she makes me want to be a better man." "And when the novelty wears off? When you realize she can never fit into our world?" There was a long pause before Elijah answered, "Maybe it's time I found a new world." My heart is breaking for Harper right now. Have you ever felt like you weren't enough for someone you loved? Share your story below. This community is here to support each other through these moments. That evening, Harper sat beside Sophia's hospital bed, reading her daughter's favorite book for the third time. Sophia was scheduled for surgery at 7 a.m., and Harper was trying desperately to act normal, to not let her terror show on her face. "Mommy," Sophia said during a quiet moment, "are you mad at Mr. Brooks?" Harper's hand stilled on the page. "Why would you ask that?" "Because he was here earlier, and you didn't look happy to see him, and now he's gone." Harper's heart clenched. In all her emotional turmoil, she hadn't considered how her conflict with Elijah might affect Sophia, who had clearly grown attached to him. "It's complicated, baby," Harper said carefully. "Is it because he helped us with the surgery money?" Sophia asked with the directness that only children possessed. Harper's breath caught. "How did you know about that?" "I heard the nurses talking. They said a nice man paid for everything so I could get better." Sophia's dark eyes were serious beyond her years. "Mommy, why would that make you mad? How could Harper explain pride to an 8-year-old? How could she make Sophia understand the complex emotions of accepting help when you'd spent your life believing you had to earn everything?" "Sometimes," Harper said slowly, "grown-ups have trouble accepting gifts, even when they come from a good place." "But Mr. Brooks does have a good place," Sophia said with certainty. "I can tell. And besides, maybe God sent him to help us." The simple faith in her daughter's voice made Harper's eyes fill with tears. When had she become so cynical, so afraid of believing in good things? "Maybe he did," Harper whispered. "Then you should say thank you instead of being mad," Sophia said pragmatically. "That's what you always tell me to do when someone is nice to me." Before Harper could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Elijah appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain and tired. He'd changed out of his expensive suit into jeans and a simple sweater, but somehow he still managed to look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to check on Sophia before her surgery tomorrow." Sophia's face lit up. "Mr. Brooks, Mommy and I were just talking about you." "Were you?" Elijah's eyes found Harper's, searching for some sign of what kind of conversation it had been. "Sophia," Harper said gently, "would you like Mr. Brooks to read to you for a while? I need to talk to the nurses about tomorrow." It was an obvious excuse to give them privacy, but Sophia clapped her hands in delight. "Yes, you can read the good parts with all the voices." As Harper stepped into the hallway, she could hear Elijah's deep voice taking on different characters for the story, making Sophia giggle with his dramatic interpretations. The sound of her daughter's laughter, so rare these past few months, made Harper's chest tight with emotion. Carmen Rossi found her there 20 minutes later, standing in the corridor listening to the sounds of joy coming from her daughter's room. "Harper," Carmen's familiar voice was warm with concern. "I came as soon as I got your message. How is she?" Harper turned to embrace her best friend, the one person who had been there through every crisis, every late-night panic, every impossible decision. "Surgery's tomorrow," Harper said into Carmen's shoulder, "and it's all paid for." Carmen pulled back, studying Harper's face. "That should be good news. Why do you look like you're about to fall apart?" Harper told her everything, from fainting at the airport to Elijah's offer to pay for the surgery to Isabel's devastating revelations about his history with women in crisis. Carmen listened without judgment, the way she always did, her dark eyes growing more thoughtful with each detail. So let me get this straight, Carmen said when Harper finished. This man rescued you, protected you during a storm, paid for your daughter's life-saving surgery, and you're upset because his mother thinks you're a gold digger. It's more complicated than that, Harper protested. Is it? Carmen asked. Harper, honey, I've known you for 10 years. You're the most independent woman I've ever met. You've never asked anyone for anything, even when you should have. If this man managed to get past those walls of yours enough that you're even considering his help, maybe you should ask yourself why. Because I was desperate, Harper said. Because I was scared and tired and not thinking clearly. Or, Carmen said gently, because you recognized something real when you saw it. Harper, when was the last time you even looked at a man? Really looked at him as more than just another person to keep at arm's length? Harper was quiet for a long moment, listening to Elijah's voice reading to Sophia. I can't afford to get this wrong, Carmen. It's not just me anymore. Sophia's gotten attached to him. If this goes bad... And if it goes right? Carmen challenged. What if, for once in your life, you allow yourself to believe that you deserve good things? That maybe this man sees something in you worth caring about? Before Harper could answer, Elijah appeared in the doorway, his expression troubled. Harper, I think you should come in here, he said quietly. Sophia wants to talk to both of us. They found Sophia sitting up in bed, her expression more serious than any 8-year-old's should be. I heard the doctor talking to the nurses, she said without preamble, about the surgery being really dangerous. Harper's heart sank. Despite their best efforts to shield her, Sophia had picked up on the gravity of her situation. Sophia, Harper began, but her daughter held up a small hand. It's okay, Mommy. I know you didn't want me to worry, but I'm not a baby. Sophia's eyes moved between Harper and Elijah. I want to say something before tomorrow, in case I don't get another chance. Don't talk like that, Harper said, her voice thick with tears. You're going to be fine. The surgery's going to fix everything. I hope so, Sophia said. But if it doesn't, I want you both to know that these have been the best 2 days of my whole life. Sophia ... Elijah's voice was rough with emotion. I've never seen my mommy smile the way she smiles when she looks at you, Mr. Brooks, Sophia continued, and I've never had someone read to me the way you do, like the story really matters. It feels like having a daddy. The words hit both adults like a physical blow. Harper covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face, while Elijah looked like he'd been punched in the chest. If something happens to me tomorrow, Sophia said, reaching for both their hands, I want you to take care of each other. Promise me. Nothing is going to happen to you, Harper said fiercely. I won't let it. Promise me anyway, Sophia insisted. Promise me you won't let your grown-up fears keep you from being happy. Harper looked at Elijah over their daughter's head, saw the same raw emotion in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. How had this happened? How had this man become so essential to both of them in such a short time? I promise, Harper whispered. I promise too, Elijah said, his thumb stroking over Sophia's small knuckles. Satisfied, Sophia settled back against her pillows. Good. Now can you both stay with me tonight? I don't want to be alone. Harper looked at the narrow hospital chairs, at Elijah's tall frame, at the impossibility of the request. But before she could figure out logistics, Elijah was already moving, pulling 2 chairs together to create a makeshift bed. I'll take the chairs, he said quietly. You take the fold-out bed. Elijah, you don't have to. Yes, he said, meeting her eyes with an intensity that stole her breath. I do. We're in this together now, Harper. All of us. As the lights dimmed and the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm, Harper lay on the narrow fold-out bed listening to the soft sounds of Sophia's breathing and Elijah's quiet presence in the chairs beside them. For the first time in years, she wasn't facing a crisis alone. And despite everything, Isabel's warnings, her own fears, the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, Harper found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth fighting for. Chapter 4. Monday morning came with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Harper had spent the weekend trying to prepare Sophia for the surgery while wrestling with her own complex feelings about Elijah's generosity. The pre-surgical tests had gone well, and Dr. Williams remained optimistic about the outcome. As the pre-surgical team arrived to prep Sophia, the little girl maintained a courage that put the adults to shame. She chatted cheerfully with the nurses, asked intelligent questions about what would happen, and seemed completely focused on the positive outcome rather than the risks. "Okay, sweetheart," Dr. Williams said gently as they prepared to wheel Sophia to the operating room. "Are you ready for your big day?" "I'm ready," Sophia said, then looked at Harper, Elijah, and Lisa with suddenly serious eyes. "But first, can I have a family hug? All of you?" Harper's breath caught. A family hug. Such a simple request that encompassed everyone who had become important to them in this journey. Without hesitation, Elijah moved to one side of the gurney while Harper and Lisa took the other. They leaned in together, creating a circle of warmth and love around the brave little girl who had brought them all together. "I love you all so much," Sophia said quietly. "Take care of each other while I'm having my heart fixed, okay?" "We love you too, baby girl," Harper said, her voice thick with tears. "We'll be right here when you wake up." "Promise?" "Promise," Elijah said, his hand finding Harper's over Sophia's small body. "We're not going anywhere." As they wheeled Sophia away, Harper felt her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. The fear was overwhelming, but manageable now in a way it hadn't been before, because she wasn't facing it alone. "She's going to be okay," he murmured against her hair. "She's the strongest person I've ever met." "She gets that from you," Harper said against his chest, surprising them both with the admission. They settled into the surgical waiting room, a sterile space filled with uncomfortable chairs and the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look like death. Other families clustered in their own bubbles of anxiety, speaking in hushed tones or sitting in shell-shocked silence. "Harper," Elijah said after they'd been waiting for an hour, "I need to tell you something." She looked up from the magazine she'd been pretending to read, seeing something vulnerable in his expression. "My mother was right about one thing," he said quietly. "I do have a history of getting involved with women in crisis situations." Harper's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to listen. "After my fiancé died," Elijah continued, "I went through a phase where helping people seemed like the only way to feel useful, to feel like my life had meaning. But those relationships were never real, Harper. They were about me trying to fix something broken inside myself." "And this?" Harper asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. "This is different," Elijah said, taking her hands in his. "This isn't about me trying to fix myself. This is about me finding something I didn't even know I was looking for." "You challenge me, Harper. You make me want to be better, not because I'm broken, but because you're worth becoming better for." Harper studied his face, searching for any hint of the polished lies wealthy men were famous. But all she saw was honesty, raw and unguarded. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not just about Sophia's surgery, about this, about believing in something that feels too good to be true." "I'm scared too," Elijah confessed. "I'm terrified that you'll decide I'm not worth the risk, that you'll walk away and take the best thing that's ever happened to me with you." Before Harper could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Isabel Brooks strode into the waiting room, but she wasn't alone. A tall, younger man with the same gray eyes and aristocratic features followed her, his expression apologetic. "That must be Victor," Elijah said with a sigh. "My brother." Isabel approached them with the determined air of someone preparing for battle, but Victor caught her arm, speaking quietly in her ear. Whatever he said made her pause, her expression shifting from determination to something that looked almost like uncertainty. "Elijah," Victor said as they reached the small seating area, "I'm sorry for barging in. I know this isn't the time, but Mother insisted." "What do you want?" Elijah asked wearily. Isabel looked around the waiting room, taking in the other anxious families, the sterile environment, the weight of life and death decisions hanging in the air. For the first time since Harper had met her, the older woman looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I wanted to," Isabel began, then stopped, clearly struggling with words that didn't come naturally to her. "I may have been hasty in my judgment yesterday." Harper blinked in surprise. This was not what she'd expected. Victor helped me understand some things, Isabel continued, her voice stiff but sincere, about the difference between charity and love, about the kind of person my son has become despite my best efforts to mold him into someone else. She turned to Harper, her expression still cool but no longer openly hostile. Miss Wilson, I don't pretend to understand my son's choices, but I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. And any child who can face what your daughter is facing with such courage must have an exceptional mother. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was as close as someone like Isabel Brooks was likely to come. Harper nodded, accepting the olive branch for what it was. Thank you, Harper said quietly. I know this isn't easy for you. Nothing about love is easy, Isabel replied, surprising them all with her honesty. But perhaps that's what makes it worth fighting for. Victor smiled at Harper, extending his hand. I'm Victor, the brother who occasionally talks sense into our family. I'm very glad to meet you. Harper, she replied, finding his warmth much easier to accept than his mother's formal politeness. I hear Sophia drew a family portrait that included Elijah, Victor said, settling into a nearby chair. I'd love to see it sometime. It's been years since anyone wanted him in their family picture. Victor, Elijah warned, but there was affection in his voice. What? It's true. You've been walking around like a ghost since Rebecca died. It's good to see you among the living again. The mention of Rebecca, Elijah's deceased fiancée, cast a momentary shadow over the group. But instead of the crushing grief that usually accompanied thoughts of his lost love, Elijah felt something else. Peace, perhaps. The ability to remember her without drowning in regret. She would have liked you, Elijah said quietly to Harper. Rebecca always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me hide behind my money. Harper squeezed his hand, understanding what it cost him to share that memory, to include her in that sacred part of his past. Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway of the waiting room, still in his surgical scrubs, his mask dangling around his neck. His expression showed cautious optimism, and Harper felt her heart start beating again. Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Brooks. Harper's chest tightened, but she could read good news in the doctor's posture before he even spoke. The surgery went exceptionally well, Dr. Williams said, and Harper's knees nearly buckled with relief. Sophia is in recovery now, and all her vital signs are strong. We were able to repair the defect completely, and the procedure went even more smoothly than we'd hoped. She should make a full recovery with no long-term restrictions. Harper sobbed, the sound torn from somewhere deep in her chest. All the fear, all the sleepless nights, all the impossible choices. It was over. Sophia was going to be okay. Elijah pulled her into his arms, his own eyes bright with tears. She did it, he whispered. Our brave girl did it. Our brave girl. The possessive caught Harper's attention, the way Elijah had naturally included himself in their family unit, and for the first time, instead of feeling threatened by that inclusion, Harper felt completed by it. When can we see her? Harper asked, wiping her eyes. She'll be groggy for another hour or so, Dr. Williams said, but you can sit with her while she wakes up. Fair warning, though. The first thing she asked for when she came out of anesthesia was her mommy, Aunt Lisa, and, he smiled, the tall, nice man who reads good stories. Harper looked at Elijah, seeing her own surprise and warmth reflected in his face. Not daddy yet, but something equally precious, acceptance and trust from a child who had learned to be cautious about the adults in her life. As they followed Dr. Williams toward the recovery ward, Harper felt Isabel's hand on her arm. Miss Wilson, the older woman said quietly, I hope you'll consider giving our family a chance. I think we need someone like you to remind us what really matters. Harper nodded, moved by the unexpected gesture. Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. That means more than you know. The recovery room was dimly lit and quiet, filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle hum of medical equipment. Sophia lay in the center of it, all looking impossibly small but peaceful, her dark curls spread across the pillow. Lisa sat in one corner, tear tracks on her cheeks but smiling with relief. Hey, sleepyhead, Harper whispered, taking Sophia's hand. Sophia's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but aware. Mommy? Her voice was hoarse from the breathing tube, but it was the most beautiful sound Harper had ever heard. "I'm here, baby girl. How do you feel?" "Sleepy," Sophia said, then her gaze found Elijah standing beside Harper. "You stayed too." "Of course I stayed," Elijah said gently. "I promised, didn't I?" "Did they fix my heart?" Sophia asked. "They fixed your heart," Harper confirmed. "It's perfect now. Dr. Williams says you can do anything other kids can do." "Good," Sophia said drowsily. "Now I can run fast and not worry you so much." Her eyes drifted closed again, but she was smiling. Over the next several days, as Sophia recovered with the resilience that only children possessed, something beautiful began to take shape. The three of them, Harper, Elijah, and Sophia, began to feel like a real family unit, not bound by crisis but by genuine affection and growing love. Elijah read to Sophia every evening, doing voices that made her giggle. Harper found herself looking forward to his visits as much as Sophia did, watching him transform from a serious businessman into someone who could spend an hour discussing the merits of different princess stories. And slowly, gradually, Sophia began calling him something new. Not Daddy, that felt too big, too fast. Instead, she started calling him Elijah, with a warmth that spoke of trust and affection. It was perfect and real and unhurried. "Harper," Elijah said quietly, careful not to wake Sophia. "I need you to know something. What I feel for you, what I feel for both of you. It isn't gratitude or obligation or some need to rescue someone. It's love. Real, terrifying, life-changing love." Harper looked at him across their daughter's bed, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she'd been afraid to pray. "I love you too," she whispered. "Both of you scare me and complete me and make me believe in impossible things." "What kinds of impossible things?" Elijah asked, his eyes warm with tenderness. "Like happily ever after," Harper said softly. "Like finding someone who sees past all your flaws and loves you anyway. Like building a family out of broken pieces and somehow making it beautiful." Elijah reached across Sophia's sleeping form to take Harper's hand. "Those things aren't impossible," he said. "They're just rare and precious and worth fighting for." As if sensing the importance of the moment, Sophia stirred in her sleep, her small hand seeking and finding both of theirs. In that quiet recovery room, surrounded by the sounds of healing and hope, three hearts that had been broken in different ways found their way back to wholeness together. 3 weeks later, the Brooks family mansion was decorated, with pink balloons and streamers filled with the laughter of children and the warm sounds of celebration. Sophia's recovery party was in full swing, and the guest of honor was holding court in the garden, regaling her new friends with tales of her heart adventure. Harper stood on the terrace, watching her daughter run and play with an energy she hadn't seen in months. Dr. Williams had declared Sophia's recovery nothing short of miraculous, her heart stronger than it had ever been. "She's incredible," Elijah said, joining Harper at the railing. "Look at her. You'd never know she just had major surgery." "Kids are resilient," Harper said, but her eyes were bright with tears of joy. "She's going to be okay, Elijah, really, truly okay." "We all are," Elijah said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Better than okay." Harper leaned back against his chest, marveling at how natural this felt, how right. Over the past 3 weeks, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm of shared meals and bedtime stories, of stolen kisses and quiet conversations after Sophia was asleep. It felt like they'd been a family for years instead of weeks. "Mommy! Daddy!" Sophia's voice carried across the garden. "Come see what Victor taught me." They watched as their daughter demonstrated a complicated card trick, her face glowing with pride and health. Victor applauded enthusiastically while Carmen laughed and demanded to know the secret. "She called you Daddy again," Harper observed. "Is that okay?" Elijah asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we haven't talked about—" "It's more than okay," Harper said, turning in his arms. "It's perfect. You are perfect. This is perfect." Elijah's smile was radiant as he leaned down to kiss her, a soft, sweet kiss that tasted like promises and new beginnings. "Actually," he said against her lips, "I have something for you." Harper pulled back, curious. Another surprise? Elijah, you've already given us so much. This isn't from me, he said, reaching into his pocket. It's from Sophia. He handed her a small, carefully folded piece of paper. Harper recognized her daughter's artwork immediately, but this drawing was different from the family portrait. This one showed the three of them standing in front of a house, but they were all wearing something that looked suspiciously like wedding clothes. She gave this to me this morning, Elijah explained, along with a very serious conversation about how families are supposed to be together forever. Harper's breath caught as she noticed what was drawn in the corner of the picture, a ring on her finger. Harper Wilson, Elijah said, dropping to one knee right there on the terrace, pulling out a simple, elegant ring that caught the afternoon light. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Sophia and whatever other adventures come our way? Harper stared at the ring, at this man who had changed everything, at their daughter playing in the garden below. 6 months ago, she'd been barely surviving, working 3 jobs and drowning in medical bills. Now she was looking at a future filled with love and possibility. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The celebration in the garden paused as Elijah slipped the ring onto Harper's finger and kissed her with all the passion and promise of their future together. Sophia's delighted squeal of, "They said yes," carried across the yard, followed by applause and cheers from their gathered family and friends. "How did you know?" Harper asked, holding up her hand to admire the ring. "About the ring size, I mean." Elijah grinned sheepishly. "Sophia told me. Apparently she's been planning this longer than either of us realized." As if summoned by their conversation, Sophia came running up to the terrace, her face glowing with excitement. "Did you say yes? Are we going to be a real family now?" "We were already a real family," Harper said, scooping her daughter into a hug. "But yes?" "I said yes." "Good," Sophia said matter-of-factly, "because I already told everyone at school that I have a daddy now, and it would be really embarrassing if I had to take it back." Elijah laughed, pulling both his girls into his arms. "Well, we can't have that, can we?" As the celebration continued around them, Harper found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The exhaustion, the fear, the moment she'd collapsed at that airport gate, feeling like she'd lost everything. She'd had no way of knowing that her lowest moment would lead to her greatest joy. "What are you thinking about?" Elijah asked, reading the expression on her face. "Just how strange life is," Harper said. "How the worst day of your life can turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you." "Do you regret any of it?" he asked. "The fear? The uncertainty? Having to accept help?" Harper considered the question seriously. "I regret that it took a crisis for us to find each other," she said finally, "but I don't regret anything else. Even the hard parts led us here." "To this," Elijah agreed, gesturing to their celebration, their family, their future. "To this," Harper echoed, and kissed him again as Sophia cheered and their friends applauded and the sun set over their new beginning. 6 months later, Harper stood in the dressing room of a small Denver church, adjusting her simple white dress and marveling at how much had changed. Through the window, she could see the guests arriving. Carmen with her kids, Dr. Williams and his wife, Victor with his latest girlfriend, even some of Sophia's school friends and their parents. Isabel appeared in the doorway, elegant in navy blue, carrying a small jewelry box. "I wanted to give you something," the older woman said, her voice uncharacteristically warm. "These were my mother's pearls. In our family, they're traditionally worn by Brooke's brides." Harper's eyes filled with tears as Isabel fastened the delicate strand around her neck. "Thank you. I'm honored." "I owe you an apology," Isabel said quietly, "and my gratitude. You've given my son something I thought he'd lost forever. You've given him joy." "He's given me just as much," Harper replied. "He's given me everything." A soft knock interrupted them, and Sophia peeked around the door. "Mommy, are you ready?" "Daddy's getting nervous." Harper laughed, her heart full to bursting. "I'm ready, baby girl." As they walked down the aisle together, Sophia scattering rose petals with the solemnity of someone performing a sacred duty, Harper's eyes found Elijah's. He was standing at the altar in a simple black suit, his gray eyes bright with love and tears, and Harper knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The ceremony was simple and perfect, filled with laughter and tears and promises of forever. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Sophia cheered loudly enough to make everyone laugh, and Harper felt her heart expand to encompass all the love and joy and possibility of their future together. Later, at the reception, as they danced to their first song as a married couple, Elijah whispered in Harper's ear, "Any regrets, Mrs. Brooks?" Harper looked around at their celebration, at Sophia dancing with Victor, at Carmen crying happy tears, at Isabel actually smiling, at all the people who had become their chosen family. "Just one," Harper said, surprising him. "What's that?" "I regret that it took me so long to realize I deserved this," she said. "That I deserved you, and Sophia deserved a father who loves her, and we all deserve to be happy." "Well," Elijah said, spinning her around, "we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." "The rest of our lives," Harper repeated, marveling at the phrase. "I like the sound of that." As the music played and their family danced around them, Harper thought about the woman who had collapsed at Gate 47 all those months ago. That woman had been exhausted, desperate, convinced she had to face everything alone. She could never have imagined that her darkest moment would lead to this, a love that transformed everything, a family built on choice rather than obligation, a future bright with possibility. Sometimes the best things in life came disguised as disasters. Sometimes falling apart was really falling together. And sometimes, when you thought you'd lost everything, you were actually about to find it all. What moment in your life felt like an ending but turned out to be a beautiful beginning? And have you ever had someone see your worth when you couldn't see it yourself? I'd love to hear your stories of unexpected love and second chances. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of love conquering all. Drop a comment sharing your own story of unexpected blessings, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss when love finds its way to our Dear Love Diaries. Family. Tomorrow brings another story of hearts finding their home. You won't want to miss it.